cause of the Civil War. The cause of the Civil War is disputed to this day. Despite it taking place over 150 years ago, most things that happened that long ago are done and settled. But the Civil War why is that? Well, the Civil War is commonly taught to be about slavery. The main and primary factor in the Civil War was slavery, they say. This is what is taught to children. But I am here to persuade you that this narrative is wrong, and that the main cause of the Civil War was economic. To quote the Charleston Mercury newspaper from November 3rd, 1960, just 2 days before the election of President Lincoln, the real causes of dissatisfaction with the South and the North are the unjust taxation and expenditure of the taxes by the government of the United States, according to the September 1964 issue of The Atlantic, titled Our Visit to Richmond, written by Edmund Kirky Jefferson Davis, said, "And so the war came, and now it must go on till the last man of this generation falls in his tracks, and his children seize the musket and fight our battle. Unless you acknowledge our right to self-government, we are not fighting for slavery. We are fighting for independence, and that, or extermination." There are many more quotes that say the Civil War was not about slavery, and there are many quotes that say the Civil War was about slavery. There are quotes on both sides, and there always will be quotes on both sides. So instead of taking these quotes at face value, let's examine them to see how truthful they really are. For a war to be about something, it is necessary that one or both sides want that thing. And Abraham, did the North want to ban slavery? Well, Abraham Lincoln was a racist, like all men and most men in that era, and he did not care about black people. The New York Times article entitled "Mr. Lincoln and Negro Equality," published on December 3rd, 28th, 1860, quotes Lincoln as saying, "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. While they do remain together, there must be a position of superior and inferior among the races, and I, as any other man, am in favor of having the superior race assigned to the whites." This is what Abraham Lincoln thought of black people. Does that sound like a man willing to send 660,000 white Americans to die in the Civil War to free these black people? The Republican Party that Lincoln was a part of also did not have the position of ending slavery. Lincoln famously said, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it." In fact, no mainstream politicians or parties in the North advocated for the ending of slavery. While there was a small minority of abolitionists in the North, they were just that, a small minority. So the North didn't want to end slavery. But did the South want to keep it? Yes, undeniably so. The South wanted to keep their slaves. But with no threat to slavery coming from the Republicans or Lincoln, why did they secede? Well, there are many reasons why the southern states seceded, and it is important to note that not all states seceded at the same time. Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Tennessee did not originally secede. In fact, they didn't secede until after Fort Sumter. After Fort Sumter, Lincoln ordered a blockade of all southern ports. And a blockade is an act of war, which requires congressional approval. But Abraham Lincoln didn't care to wait for congressional approval. He also suspended habeas corpus, which allowed him to throw over 10,000 Americans in jail, including the Supreme Justice on the Supreme Court. These illegal and unconstitutional actions prompted these 4 states to secede. According to founders.archives.gov, Alexander Hamilton, a founding father, said this: "To coerce a state would be one of the maddest projects ever devised. And no other state would ever suffer itself to be the instruments to coerce another." And when the 4 states saw that Lincoln wanted to march 75,000 troops through them to get to the South, they refused to be used to coerce another state and seceded themselves. From the speech entitled "Perils and Duties of the South from November 1960, given by J.L.M. Curry, the Union brought in about $107 million in tariffs, but the North only paid 13%, in spite of being a much larger economy. With the North being industrial, they imported goods to feed their raw factories, and with the South being agrarian, they exported goods to feed factories in Britain, mainly cotton and tobacco. The South exporting goods is what was taxed, and ended up with the South paying 87% of the Union's tariffs. A famous general, Robert E. Lee, was offered command of the Northern forces. He was offered command of the Union Army, but he refused to command an army to invade his homeland of Virginia and defected to the South. If the North didn't want to abolish slavery and the South left because of economic and political reasons, why is it commonly taught that the war was about slavery? Where did this come from? Well, I briefly talked earlier about the fact that Lincoln used many unconstitutional and illegal actions during the war. And I left out one, perhaps the most important one. It was the South was allowed to leave. There was no part of the Constitution that forbids secession. And in fact, many founding fathers were in favor of secession, having seceded from Britain themselves. So, this is shown by when Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, was captured at the end of the war and arrested. He was to be put to trial, and many Northerners look forward to seeing this man hanged for his treason. And the Union put Clifford, John J. Clifford, as the prosecutor in this case. But after looking at the overall evidence in the case, he refused to be the prosecutor. With a review of the case from 1926 written by Roy Franklin Nicholas, quoted Clifford as saying, "The government ended up fighting a successful war only to have it be declared unlawful. The North tried to get other lawyers to prosecute, but all refused, agreeing that the Union was going to lose the case and Jefferson Davis was going to be found not guilty. The Union knew now that if they went to trial, not only would they lose, but the war would be declared unlawful, and 660,000 American families would have lost a loved one in an illegal war." So instead of trial, President Johnson pardoned former president of the CSA, Jefferson Davis. So Lincoln started an illegal war, violated the Constitution many times, and became tyrannical. With his re-election in 1964 coming up, he needed a reason that he could do all of this, and he thought of an idea: emancipation. With Britain and France across the pond being sympathetic to the South, getting much of their imported cotton from the South, Lincoln had an idea to keep them at bay and to justify his illegal war, emancipation. If Lincoln could turn this war into a war of emancipation, not only could he keep Britain out of the war, with them being anti-slavery as well, but he could provide moral justification. He killed two birds with one stone, keeping the British out of the war and providing a moral justification for his tyrannical actions. Now, so the idea that the war was about slavery is just used to justify Lincoln's illegal actions. This is evidenced by when General Fremont in his military district in Missouri freed his slaves. He freed his slaves, and President Lincoln promptly dismissed him, saying that, and returned their slaves to the masters, saying that it was the war for the great national idea. The Union and General Fremont should not have drugged the Negro into it. That was after his Emancipation Proclamation. That's according to David Herbert Donald in his book Lincoln, published in 1955, page 315. So the idea that the war was over slavery was a tool used by the North to justify Lincoln's illegal actions and to keep foreign powers out of the war. For years since and to this day, this has been used to discredit and smear Southern Americans. for both those who do and do not wave the Confederate flag, often marginalized. The facts are that since the Civil War, the South has been the poorest region of the country. You see stereotypes of Southerners being dumb, poor, and this is used to demean Southerners. And to quote Huffington Post, the South is essentially a block of grim, solid poverty on the 2nd of September 2014. Well, I just told you the title of the article. That's about all I got to say. To conclude, you've seen that the North had put a completely unfair taxation on the South, and the South had no reason to suspect that the North was going to take their slaves. You've seen that the Southerners marginalized and mocked for the past. Often poor and uneducated, white trash is a common insult to Southern whites. So now maybe that I'm done, the cause of the Civil War will be less disputed among you all, and maybe one less Southerner will be mocked for his past. Thank you.